Hi, this is Stinger, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can efficiently use the Bezier curves in Clip Studio Paint. I think the Bezier curves, or curves in general in Clip Studio Paint, are a really useful tool to not only create very clean clip art or logos or some other vector graphics style stuff, but also for using it to create more technical drawings or hard surface stuff like mechanics, spaceships, airplanes, cars, whatever you can imagine. Because curves are a lot more versatile than just simple lines you draw. The full potential of curves is unleashed if you use the vector layers in Clip Studio Paint. A raster layer is information stored in pixel, and it can't be manipulated afterwards. With a vector layer, the information is stored as coordinates and connected points. So if you draw different lines, you can select them separately and manipulate them. Also, we have the option to use the vector eraser. It has some options to only erase the touched area, and that works like a normal eraser. And you also have the option to erase up to intersection. That means where a line is intersecting, you can erase the overlapping parts, so to say. And that's very useful for a lot of designs where you want clear corners and you just draw the overlapping lines and then erase the rest. We have these curves in our figure tool. You can also, if you have like messed up your interface and you don't see this anymore, you can either go to workspace and reset to default, but be careful with it because your shortkeys will be lost and many more things. But you also can go up there and you add them from default, and you go there, you find, where is it? Figure. And if you add these from default, you see that you have your tool here with the subtools. I'm going to delete this for now because I've already done this, but I have a shortkey assigned to it. So I recommend you to assign a shortkey to this. And yeah, let's get started. Let me first explain you what these tools are in the first place. So we have a straight line here, we have a curve, we have a polyline, we have a continuous curve, the lasso fill, rectangle, ellipse, polygon, and control point tool. So the straight line and the curve tool are very similar to each other because they're basically the same except one thing. If you go here to this thing, show subtool detail palette, you see that under unit curve, we have this curve option, and we can choose here between a straight line, a quadratic Bezier, and a cubic Bezier curve. And what this does is it turns your straight line subtool into a curve tool. Now we have the polyline and the continuous curve tool, and it's the same for these types because the polyline is nothing more than a continuous curve with a straight line curve assigned to it. So these three are basically the same. These two and these lasso fill is basically, it fills an area with a color. So, but let's go back to the curves for now, because that's what the tutorial is about, isn't it? I will exclusively talk about the continuous curve tool because everything I tell you about this one applies to the polyline and the single curve. So the continuous curve tool can be used on both types of layers. It can be used on a raster layer and it can be used on a vector layer. The difference is that, as I already told you before, on a raster layer it's not editable. Another difference is that you can choose how the line is filled. So you can create a shape that is filled with your main drawing color, like that. And you also can create both line and fill. And then it will be filled with the subcolor, and the line color will be your main drawing color. Something like that. And you don't have this option on the vector layer. Let me switch to the vector layer for now. On a vector layer, we only have the line. We don't have the filling. Why? Because in Clip Studio Paint, the vector layers are only meant for lines. So this is the only difference apart from the editability. So in this tutorial, I want to mainly talk about using Bezier curves on vector layers, because I think that's where all the potential lies. You can, of course, use the Bezier curves on a raster layer. That's not forbidden. It's a good tool anyway. But yeah, it's the best that you create a vector layer and try these things out on a vector layer. As I already said before, we have the option for different curve types. The first one is the spline curve. And you set your points, and Clip Studio Paint interpolates the curvature between these points. So we had this other tool here, it's control point. And there you have the options to either add a control point or move control points. But I don't really use that a lot, because you can also go in there and press Control and click on the line. And you see that you have your line selected, and then you can move things around, and you can right click on it and add a control point. Or you can switch the corner to a broken handle. So this one isn't aligned anymore here. So if you want to change it back, you can go to the point, select it and switch corner again, and then you have your smooth curve again. But if you want to have a more complex line, you always have to add control points. And let's say we want to have influence on this curvature here. We only can do this by dragging these points or adding other points to the line, which makes everything a bit too complex. What we can do is we can choose the quadratic Bezier, which is a bit more complex and allows for more adjustments. So I set my point, and I set my second point, and this point is basically it's working like an influence point on the curve. So all the points you set are more like orientation marks or points that influence your curve. And that's pretty neat, because now we don't have our point here like in a spline. We have it up here, and we can manipulate the curve a bit better. But for me, it's not like this is already an improvement to the spline, and it always depends on what you want to do. For simple things, this one could be really useful and sufficient. And now we want to have a look at the cubic Bezier. The cubic Bezier, if I'm honest, it's like the queen or king, whatever you want, of curves. Because they allow for much more adjustments. So it works a bit different to spline and quadratic Bezier. With the spline you set your points, and you always tap, 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 or click, click, click if you're on the mouse. But with the cubic Bezier you have this option specify, and we have it set to drag. So we don't tap. If we tap it, we create something like the polyline, a straight line. That's good. But if we keep it pressed, we see that there is this point here, and we have like this dot now. And basically what this is, now you can choose what the initial angle of the curve will be. So for example, like that. So you see, the curve is pulled in this direction. So the next point I'm setting is like the end point of this segment. So you set this point and keep it pressed. Now there's another point, and it's like the handle for the end of the segment. So now you can choose what angle the line is going through this point. So let's say we want something like this. And now the curve is again pulled towards this one, or it's influenced by this handle here. So the length of the handle indicates how much influence it has on the curvature. I can make it really short, and therefore the line won't be that influenced by it. Just to recapitulate, we keep it pressed, set the angle of our line, and press, and now we are defining the alignment of the second point in the segment. You see? So if we press enter, we commit the line, and we will leave this initial stage where we draw all these points. Let's try it out. And the line is there. If you press Ctrl and click on the line, you see that we have basically the same setup here. We can adjust the handles to set our angle and something like this. Also can do, apart from adjusting the direction or the angle, is we can adjust the length of the handle here, and they are not connected anymore. So we can adjust these handles independently from each other, but they are completely aligned to each other. What we can do is we can lower, or we can shorten the handle to decrease its influence on the line, and you will see that we have something like a broken vector here. It's similar to what you want to do. It's similar to the straight line, if you remember. And if I go to this point and switch corner, it's turning this into a completely broken vector, which means the incoming angle has nothing to do with the outcoming angle. You can adjust them completely free and independent from each other. It makes up for some really sharp corners and drastic changes in curvature, something like that. I typically don't use this that much, because what I use the Bezier curves for is mainly perspective drawings. For example, this one. And let me quickly disable all these layers. Even the corners that appear to be very sharp in angle are nothing more than regular points of a Bezier curve with a very short handle. So if I make this handle longer, you see that that the software tries to somehow make a smooth curve out of it. But if I make this short, really short, and sometimes I have to adjust the other line, then it will appear like a broken vector. So let us switch this corner just to demonstrate what I mean. So I have nearly the same look, but you see it's just a bit too sharp here, and for my taste it's sometimes a bit too sharp. So, but to summarize, the length of the handle is setting the influence of the handle. So if it is a long one, you see it has a lot of influence, and Clip Studio Paint tries to interpolate the curvature here, which makes up for some really smooth results. Let us have again a look at how to create these curves, because there are some awesome features here in Clip Studio Paint that help you create curves very quickly and easily. And now let's say I want the direction like aligned to some angles. So I can press, as with the line creation, I can press Shift, and then it snaps to the 45-degree angle. And that's very useful. You still can change the length of the handle. Then we press and keep it pressed and press Shift again, and you see, we can align it again. You can make very clean designs with this. And to which angle the vector snaps to, you can find in the subtool Detail palette under Continuous Curve and then Step of Angle. And even if this isn't enabled, you still access it with pressing Shift. And I think that's a really cool user interface twist. So with 15 degrees, I think you have pretty much everything covered. So then there is another option, and that is if you press and press Alt, you see that the cursor is changing here. And that means that the next point you will set will be a broken vector. If you let go of Alt, it will switch back to an aligned vector. So for example, if I press Shift, it snaps to the angle. I adjust the handle size. Then I keep Shift pressed and press Alt. Now I can let go of Shift, but I have to keep Alt pressed. Or I press Shift and align it to another angle. And then I let go, and now I can let go of my keys. And if I press Shift again, or if I click and keep it pressed and keep Shift pressed, I can still, or can again, align it to an angle. In the beginning it can be really difficult to get your head around this, but just try your best and give yourself some time. Don't be disencouraged by, if it doesn't work. So if you create a line and you made a mistake, something like that, you always can press Delete. And what Delete does when creating curves is it's working like an undo. It undoes the last step you've made in the curve creation. Usually it's used for deleting the content of your layer or a selected area. And it's very useful to set a shortcut to this. On the main menu, Edit, Delete. So if you're creating a line and after the first point you press Delete, it gets deleted, the whole line. But if you are drawing the line and press Delete, the last step is deleted. And undo, so Control C, is not working in this stage. You have to work with Delete. Only if you have committed this line with Enter or with double click, you can press Control C or undo and the line will be deleted. So I think this is very important to know. If you have problems in the beginning to get everything right, please don't worry, because you can just set your points, press Control and go into it and adjust everything to your liking. Did you know that you can duplicate a vector line basically by selecting it with Control? And then while you're holding Control, you press C on the keyboard it's like Control C, and then you press U, which is pasting for Control U. And that is a very useful workflow if you are creating offsets in a perspective drawing. So for example like this, and then you go into your eraser. There's the vector eraser, and then you delete the overlapping line here. Then we have to adjust this one. We can even go further and set our vector layer as a reference layer, and that enables us to use many tools in Clip Studio Paint, like the brushes or fill bucket tool or magic wand tool, to reference to this layer. So you should check it out in the manual of Clip Studio Paint under reference layer. It's a very useful tool, and I use it here, as you can see, to fill in my parts. So I switch to the magic wand tool, select an area, then switch back to my gradient tool and fill in these shadows. And it's a really nice workflow, it's rewarding and quick and easy. So this is just a hint, you should definitely check this out. And in my future videos you will surely come across this technique again, because I use it a lot, and maybe I make a video only about this, using the reference layer. So if you want to learn more about it, just write me in the comments. So we are already at the end of the video, and if you want to keep your creative juices flowing, I have something for you. And that is a fully commanded time-lapse of a car design I just recently made. And for the line art I used all the techniques explained in this video. So if you want to learn how to create a design from start to finish, head over to Gumroad, there's my store, and you can get this for $0, which means completely free. And also in the package is included a high-resolution version of the Clip Studio Paint file, so you can open it and go through all the layers. And you can use this as a learning resource to just try out, and I have many effects going on there, and you can study to your heart's content. And whatever you do with the techniques you learned now, I would really love to see it. So just tag me on Instagram or Twitter. My name is The Soul Stinger, and I really appreciate your support. See you next time.